As we all reimagine mobility, we are aware that science, technology, manufacturing, and enabling policies all play an important role in this transition. What is equally important is financing this transition at both the macro and the retail level. To shed some light on this topic, we have the Chairman and Managing Director of Bajaj Finserv, a national industry leader and a global success story in the world of finance. May I now invite on stage Mr. Sanjiv Bajaj, Chairman and Managing Director, Bajaj Finserv. May I also invite on stage Mr. Prashant Girbane, Director General, MCCIA, to moderate this fireside chat.
When you come to Pune, there are a few things you can't miss. There are a few things that you're very, very, very proud of. And right at the top among them is the industry group that is well known not just for India's might in economy, but also for a lot of work that has happened on philanthropy by this group. When you come to Pune, look at some of the success stories. There is one name that stands out very, very tall, and that's Bajaj Finserv. When you look at the case studies written by banking analysts, professors in national academic institutions or international academic institutions, understandably, they haven't missed a case study that was built on Bajaj Finserv. Even on a lighter note, if you invested directly or indirectly, you definitely didn't want to miss on this. Thank you so much, Sanjiv, for agreeing to speak or interact with us on this platform. The Pune Alternate Fuel Conclave has been running since Saturday. Today and tomorrow we have the conference. And we all are very, very excited to hear your views on some of these topics. If it's all right, if I could start with a couple of questions.
Sure, and thank you for that very kind introduction, Prashant. I don't think my own corporate communications team could have done a better job. So yeah, shoot ahead.
Thank you so much. Before I ask the question, I must mention, Mr. Bajaj is here, not just as the MD.
Just call me Sanjiv.
Yeah, sure. But I'll tell you what, there is a lot of pride in talking about the Bajaj name, so much so that, right, I must kind of relate to all the people who take equal amount of pride, and hence once in between, like it's a good idea to go back to Mr. Bajaj. So thank you, Sanjiv. If you look at Sanjiv's profile running Bajaj Finserv right from starting it all the way till here is one thing that we're all aware of. But there is also a national leader out here, not just in his segment, but somebody who is the president-elect at CII, one of the most prestigious bodies in our country. In next couple of months, he'll be taking over as president of CII. So congratulations and thank you so much for joining again.
Thank you.
Oh, I think I forgot to say this because for the first time I've come on stage. There is no penalty for claps, trust me. And I do not know anybody who got affected or harmed because they clapped. Thank you. I'll come to the question, Sanjiv. The first one is, this conference is about alternate fuel. So it'll be great to hear your views as a national leader on the cleaner, greener economy that we all are aspiring to go towards. Where do we stand? Where do you think it's headed to?
Prashant, directionally, we're clearly headed in making the effort in driving the change so that in the coming decades, as a globe, because pollution does not know any boundaries. So as a globe, we get together and drive towards a cleaner, greener world so that we can leave this world for our children and their children in a far better state than where it is today. And at a macro level, with the last COP26 that took place last year in Glasgow, countries have made significant commitments to how they want to move forward. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. The Western world was supposed to provide over $100 billion to the developing countries over the last decade, as we stop using fossil fuel and move towards greener fuel. Not even $1 billion has come so far. They only talk. And they were doing us no favors because they've spent the last 50 years burning those fuels for their own development. So this was their cess for countries like us to move more rapidly towards cleaner, greener technology, but they've not done that. Despite that, countries like India, for example, our commitment on renewable energy, we are ahead than the commitment we made at the last climate talks. We have committed for 50% of our power, I think, to be renewables by 2030.
That's right.
Almost 400 gigawatt of green renewable energy. We've committed to net zero by 2070. For the first time, our government, led by our Prime Minister, has given a date. There are steps that we have committed to taking. But this is at a larger level. We have to really try and think at the ground level, how do we make this work? And for this, there are 3 ecosystems that need to work together.
Right.
The first ecosystem is the entire electric vehicle ecosystem.
Right.
Or I'm saying electric vehicle, it could be hydrogen, it could be anything renewable, but for simplistic reason, I'm saying the electric vehicle
That's
ecosystem.
why we would call it alternate fuel.
Exactly, exactly. What it means is from research and innovation to manufacturing and organizing the supply chain, to charging, which means dispersal of that, to disposal and repurchase.
Right.
This ecosystem needs to be planned properly. The interesting thing is, if we try to think about the last 100 years, most innovation has come from the West. And countries like ourselves have taken that innovation, adapted it to ourselves, have manufactured. But in these times, and the last 2 decades, India, with its per capita GDP growing from less than $1,000 to over $2,000 now, is in a position where we can today innovate for the world. We can produce, not only for ourselves, but for the world. That's the opportunity that countries like India have. We are at a unique point of time where we no longer have to just take what is invented somewhere else in the world. But we must keep in mind, world is not waiting for us to do that. Hence, policies, actions, investment at our, within our boundaries will decide what role we play. So this alternate fuel ecosystem for vehicles needs to be developed. The second ecosystem is one that already exists, which is the IC ecosystem, the current internal combustion engine ecosystem. That ecosystem also has R&D, has manufacturing, has suppliers, manufacturers, has a supply chain, has a disposal and upgradation process. And we have to keep in mind that a large part of that ecosystem will become redundant in the coming decades. How do we proactively, through policy, through action, through investment, create maximum overlap between these 2 ecosystems? For example, simplistically, a lot of the auto component manufacturers, including so many in and around Pune, that make engine parts, will become redundant at some point of time when vehicles become more electric.
Absolutely.
How do we integrate them into the electric value chain? So this is the second ecosystem. The third ecosystem is the financial and insurance ecosystem, which enables this, from providing research money to providing money for setting up infrastructure and capacity, charging stations, insuring it, you're protecting. We have to see these 3 ecosystems being managed in a proactive manner, end to end, at the center level and then at state level. The more sensibly we do it, and as I said, it has to be proactive. It can't be when we see a problem, we correct it. So the more proactive we make it, the more easy it will be for us and the more efficient it will be for us to build the entire new ecosystem.
No, thank you so much. I think we appreciate the point about these 3 ecosystems. The alternate fuel world, as it's picked up now and progressing, the internal combustion world, which requires for it to transition to the newer world, and then the enabling world of finance and insurance, as you mentioned. A connected question, as part of the retail finance, do you see some early signs of the trends picking up on special financing kind of requirements or offerings for the EV purchases? Is there anything different, or is it just the same irrespective of what kind of vehicle people would buy?
No, so two important things. One, in the last 4 or 5 months, we have seen the quality parameters in our retail lending come back to pre-pandemic levels. And that's very important to note and very heartening to note. Of course, it assumes there won't be another serious wave. It assumes this war will find a method to calm down. But right now, that's looking positive. Coming to EVs, these are still early days, and that's why today we do financing and we run insurance on EVs. But that's also a way for us to understand and participate in the current ecosystem as it is developing. We are also working with partners overseas, including in Insurance Allianz is our joint venture partner, because of advancements in some of these areas over there to try and understand how it will affect mobility in India. So it's still early days, but yes, we have our fingers in it right now.
Sure, given the kind of analytics that happens at Bajaj Finserv, I'm sure that we would be able to spot those trends and hear more about it in near future. Just yesterday, I was looking at a newspaper in Pune, and it mentioned that good 14-15% of the vehicles registered last month, the two-wheelers, were EV. 14 to 15% of every 6th vehicle registered was EV, and every 20th car registered was EV in Pune just last month. So hopefully the trend should pick up. We are doing this Pune AFC, we are calling it Pune Alternate Fuel Conclave, because Pune is known to be a leader in automotive sector, not just in Maharashtra, but in the entire country. And of course, the name starts with Bajaj, Tatas, and many, many other brands who are here today. As the transition happens, the role for Pune, what would be? Of course, all of us aspire that role to be a role of a leader again, and even better. How do you see it, both as a Punekar, as an industrialist here, as well as the national perspective that you have, in Pune being able to keep this leadership or even move ahead?
You know, Pune has a very special position. Not only is it the 7th largest city in the country, but through a combination of our education institutions, the employment opportunities, we are one of the largest industrial hubs in the country, to a place to live, a great place to live. Weather, most of the year it's great weather. I think after Bangalore, of any large city, Pune has the next best weather. And it's home to so many of us. But for the reasons that I've said, it has a great opportunity to be one of the best cities to live and to study, live and work and settle down in Pune. It used to be, you know, the retirement city 30 years ago. And today it's one of the largest IT hubs, one of the largest auto hubs, and so many other sectors as well. But the same city is getting hotter, weather's getting more extreme. Look at the weather the last couple of weeks. Pollution, big problem. Third, our green spaces are becoming smaller. So uncontrolled building, we have to be able to control that. And no traffic sense. Unfortunate, but true. People think it's their right to ride or drive on either side of the road. Though people don't want to wear helmets, this has been a constant challenge that the police has had over decades. And, you know, people listen for some time, then we don't listen. Our roads are not marked. In any country, city of the world, you mark your roads and the traffic improves by 50% because people follow that. So I think we first have a responsibility for the Pune of today. The Pune of today, which has tremendous promise in this country, can be a better place to study, live and work. And we need to see collectively how we can work towards that. Second is the Pune of tomorrow. The Pune of tomorrow, for all the ingredients I have talked about, can be a vibrant EV hub for not only this country, for all over the world. And there will be many such cities like Pune in the country which can be, but not more than 3 or 4. So I think both keeping in mind the central policy on electric vehicles and Maharashtra's own progressive policy announced last year, we go into action and we have an early lead as a city.
I think if you look at just the kind of companies around here in the exhibition that we're running, about 80 companies participated. And out of those, about 70-80% of those, so that's about 60 companies, are manufacturing EVs of one kind of or another right here in Pune district. So hopefully those are the good signs and we get to see this building up again. You represent a financial services company. You have built a company that's globally well known. What is the role that the financial services can play in speeding up the transition? Because this is a good transition. That's the transition that we all are aspiring to. The transition from the petrol diesel vehicles to the new mobility, to the clean mobility, to the green mobility, to the sustainable mobility. So what's the role that it can play? Or what is the role that other stakeholders like government or citizens can play?
You know, this huge transition from IC to alternate fuel vehicles is a transition if you try to think about it after 100 years, because little less than, about 100 years ago is when IC engines really started getting onto cars, right? So any such massive technology transformation has its own pace. Now to accelerate that pace, there are two significant outsiders that can play a role. One is the government, with policies, with incentives, etc., etc. And the second is financial services, because financial services is a big enabler. And I see, for example, that there are policies, as I said, already in place. We'll see more details of that coming forward. But one, in the state government's policy, there is one on access of credit to alternate vehicles and to EVs, to buy those. So this is something that we should build on. And the government has also announced incentives for the initial set of vehicles, the early bird offer. So these are very positive, because once you get a certain number of vehicles on the road by the early adopters, many others who are waiting and watching will get confidence. Second is, unlike a current car, as an owner of that car, I know what it costs to buy that car. Okay, I'm going to get an incentive for the electric vehicle. Right. I know what it costs to run my current car. I know with electric vehicles, hopefully it will be cheaper, but it is driven by price of electricity, but hopefully it will be cheaper. But a very important decision for a lot of people when they buy a car is what is the resale value of that car, because that goes towards my deposit for my next car. Now that is something which naturally for electric vehicles is an unknown, because it's still a new entity, right? It will take time to develop that. Technology is changing very rapidly. So the life of the battery will also change or will also shorten, because every 3-4 years, new batteries will become far more efficient and cheaper than the current ones. And battery cost is, 40-50% depending on the vehicle. So there are some uncertainties in place. And that's where what we would do is we would encourage governments to put together, one, a credit default fund. So for example, the central government had a fund for MSMEs through the pandemic.
ECLGS kind of a scheme.
Exactly.
ECLGS, Emergency Credit Link Guarantee Scheme that ran for 3 lakh crores.
Correct. So they had a emergency credit guarantee scheme. They also had a first loss scheme on lending. So the idea was everybody doesn't need the incentive, but those people who are not able to pay back because of extraneous circumstances, then the fund comes in use over there. And that encouraged banks and NBFCs to lend through the last 2 years as well. In the same way, what one could do is to set up a fund which takes care of first loss for, say, the first 100,000, 200,000 vehicles. What it allows then for banks and NBFCs to do is to lend against those vehicles without knowing what will the residual price be.
Sorry to interrupt. That makes a lot of sense, isn't it? Because if you look at the credit default rate on the ECLGS, far lesser than the NPA numbers that we have. So it's like pretty simple. And I think the multiplier is a lot bigger because you're only doing the portion of it, the credit default one. So a lot better, I guess.
No, absolutely correct. Instead, there's an interview with somebody senior from State Bank of India today who says that last 2 years on MSMEs, delinquencies on loans were far less than what was projected. Because once the central government created a scheme which gave confidence to people to lend, people were still, lenders were still sensible in how they lent. And most borrowers don't want to default if they can avoid it, because they realize that it affects your credit going forward. Eventually, you're running a business not for 1 or 2 years, but for many years. This is just the confidence it gives you, that in a really tough situation, somebody is there to help me. And I think the same level of confidence over here can accelerate the program.
Sure, thank you. I think that's a very, very interesting input for all of us having commentary on the policy, because something like the credit default dimension would certainly accelerate the pickup among the consumers. As you mentioned, Sanjiv, the pickup among consumers is important, the critical mass is important, and hence yesterday on Sunday morning, we had organized a rally of the alternate fuel vehicles. This is just for your information and that of others. About 400 vehicles participated. It started from Sinchan Nagar in Pune, went around Pune about 25, 26 kilometers. 400 vehicles, about 330 of those bikes, about 35 three-wheelers, and many of the manufacturers of those are sitting out here in the audience today, and about 45 cars. And we also had hydrogen fuel bus. Possibly for the first time in the country, the hydrogen fuel bus ran on the road. And that happened here. And of course, the EV bus. So, of course, that's one of the attempts of the Pune Alternate Fuel Conclave to take this message forward, as you pointed. Just the last question, a message from you as the Punekar, as Mr. Bajaj, as the President-elect of CII, as the national leader, as somebody we all respect for the journey that you and your organization has had. What would be your message to all of us on this occasion? That's my last question to you.
Okay, that's a very broad question, but let me take a shot at that. Any large change is driven top-down. See, small incremental changes can happen at different levels. So I'm very happy to see the sponsorship that this event has got from Aditya ji. He himself has been here. I know he was there at the rally yesterday. That sponsorship is exceedingly important because that brings about seriousness, that brings about the momentum for change. The next has to be large companies, financiers, insurance companies like ourselves, who have to get involved in trying to understand various aspects of the ecosystem and how can we, in an organized manner, work in taking it from where it is today to tomorrow. And again, this is not just at a city level, this is at a larger macro level. As far as Pune as a city is concerned, I believe we have the right ingredients. As I mentioned earlier, qualified workforce, we've got academia, industry, which does not do still the amount of research together as they should. But I'm also in my CI capacity trying to drive some of that change. Sudhir is here. He's not only president of Maratha Chamber, but he was prior to me chairman of CI for Western Region. I know he was trying that as well. And these are not one-off initiatives. One has to work on it year on year and start building that culture. I won't even talk about Pradeep Bhargav, who we all look up to, who acts more youthful than any one of us. His energy levels are tremendous.
Pradeep ran the Green Initiative, sorry to interrupt, Pradeep ran the Green Initiative in CII, isn't it, for a long time? So.
Exactly. And on skill building even now. So we've got the ingredients in Pune, we've got the brain, we've got the manpower, we've got capital, we've got the infrastructure. We have to put our will together from a pollution, from a traffic, from an opportunity point of view for each and every citizen in Pune, and from a quality of life point of view in Pune. We have to make our effort to make it a better place today and tomorrow. And since we have the Honorable Minister with us, I might as well say on behalf of all of us, we need a better airport. Can we at least get that? Aditya ji, since you're here, I'm saying we need a better airport. Please help us. But tremendously proud being a Punekar. All my 52 years I've been over here, initially staying in a small outskirts of Akudi till last year. I stay in the city now, but very happy to be here, and I am exceedingly confident and encouraged by what Pune has done as a city, because I travel all around the country and around the world, and I want Pune to be better and better. I know we can do a lot more, but when I see so many other cities around the country, we are already way ahead. I don't say that to the bureaucrats I meet, because then, they get lazy. But we are very good, but we have to get even better. That's what I hope for as a citizen of Pune. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bajaj. Round of applause. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and for the wonderful conversations. Many, many thanks.